and we're kicking off today with CM Punk, and it's safe to say that he is one of the most divisive figures in current wrestling, and the real AEW World Champion has made a lot of enemies in his career. Recently, Ryan Nemeth was blocked from being at a taping of AEW Collision, presumably on the orders of Punk himself, as we've since learned more of the beef between the two men. Following Punk's return to AEW programming in June, Nemeth called Punk the softest man alive, as a response to Punk using his first promo back in months to take a shot at the Young Bucks. PW Torch reports that after this collision, Punk and Nemeth had a confrontation at the June 21st episode of Dynamite over what Nemeth had said. The report reads, "At that Dynamite, PW Torch sources indicated Punk confronted Nemeth in the locker room. The story conveyed to PW Torch is that Punk cornered Nemeth in the locker room, got inches from his face, and angrily and aggressively asked if they had a problem or if they needed to settle things outside. Punk cited to Nemeth that his comments on Twitter inflamed existing tensions and that the optics of the tweet sent a bad message. This incident was witnessed by numerous wrestlers and was characterized as awkward and weird." Nemeth moved the argument to the hallway, where Punk continued to berate him, according to our sources. Nemeth defended his judgment in calling Punk soft since Punk fired the first shots at the Bucks. Punk pushed back that his timing was bad and worked against the public image they were going for, that everyone was either on the same page or at least not inflaming prior issues. Nemeth then asked Punk if he shouldn't react to things Punk says on TV, and Punk says that'd be the right choice at the time. Then they shook hands, but apparently the tension was still high as they went their separate ways. Nemeth confided the incident in friends backstage and asked how to handle the situation. Nemeth has almost no leverage in AEW compared to Punk, who is a much bigger star, so Nemeth backed off and laid low, since his job could be at risk if Punk spoke out behind the scenes against him. He even has since deactivated his Twitter account. Nemeth's affiliation with the Bucks is well documented, as he has featured multiple times on being the Elite, and he's not the only name that Punk has taken issue with. Matt Hardy, Christopher Daniels, and others were not allowed to attend Collision tapings because CM Punk is calling the shots about who is allowed into his show's locker room, in quite the power play by Punk. An update from Wade Keller added that many AEW talent feel like they're in an awkward position as they disagree with Punk's views and his attitude, but realize that speaking up may impact their careers. Tony Khan has certainly chosen his side, with the report adding that during the first collision, Khan was backstage pumping his fist and chanting Punk's name upon the Chicago-made wrestler's return. There is some irony to the fact that Punk has taken great issue with what someone said about him, as he doesn't stop to think about not bashing others, whether it's on social media or on AEW programming. Once again, Punk's actions outside of the ring are proving to be more interesting than what's been going on TV, and how would you handle this situation? Let us know in the comments. CM Punk has made it abundantly clear that he's willing to hold a grudge, and he certainly holds a grudge over what happened last year at All Out in Chicago. As we've learned, Punk has significant sway about who is and who isn't allowed to be at Collision tapings, so it should come as no surprise that the Elite haven't been part of the new show. Despite this, Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful Select reports that Punk is telling people that he wants to sit down with the Elite, but Omega, the Bucks, and Page are said to be refusing that request. Sources added that Page tries to stay out of the situation and hasn't been interested in working with Punk for at least the last year or so. As for the remainder of the Elite, it's said that outbursts from Punk like what we saw after this week's collision only make them want to distance themselves from him more, believing he will do more harm than good. Some in AEW have said that the Punk situation is a ticking time bomb, one that may be blowing up in Tony Khan's face soon. And for now, the Elite want no part of the controversial Collision star. We mentioned that Adam Page tries to stay out of the CM Punk situation, but that's proving to be easier said than done with how Punk is acting. After Collision, Punk claimed that Page can't pop a rating or move merchandise, and unsurprisingly, this comment hasn't gone down well with those in AEW. On Wrestling Observer Radio, Dave Meltzer stated that every time Punk decides to go into business for himself like this, he only makes things worse for AEW, and therefore worse for himself. It was also reported that there has been stuff since day one of Punk's return, as the self-proclaimed real world champion has made it clear backstage that he still has issues with some in AEW. Like his digs at Page at All Out, Punk's comments haven't gone down well, and some have claimed Punk is essentially burying AEW with this dig, claiming that one of the company's most featured stars isn't a draw. It wasn't too long ago that Punk was said to be working on repairing his image, and last week's collision was a huge step backwards from any progress he may have made. Over to Raw now, as Becky Lynch and Trish Stratus were hardly happy that their SummerSlam match was bumped from the card, and weren't exactly subtle about it on social media. On this week's Raw, the pair finally did battle in a match that went around the arena, as the two stars gave it their all to try and end this feud on top. Unfortunately, it seems the pair gave too much, as the bout would end in a double countout, infuriating fans who, after the SummerSlam fiasco, wanted to see a decisive victor. Post-match, Zoe Stark, who'd been banned from ringside, showed up to help Trish beat Becky down, and while she didn't win, the Hall of Famer was left standing tall. A frustrated Adam Pearce would later declare that Trish and Lynch will face off again, and this time it'll be in a steel cage, but gave no confirmation as to when this match will be taking place. This match has been building since April, and ahead of Raw, many fans were pushing for the two to headline the show, but despite the online rallying, the Lynch-Stratus match didn't close out the show. With WWE Payback mere weeks away, perhaps this much-anticipated rematch will air at the event in Pittsburgh, and what did you make to what we saw this week? Let us know in the comments. Raw also saw Seth Rollins and Shinsuke Nakamura come face-to-face this week, 1 week on from Nakamura betraying the Architect on last week's Raw. In a surprisingly civil interaction, Nakamura and the reigning World Heavyweight Champion agreed to a match in the future, and while no date was given, it's predicted the match will happen at Payback. In the closing moments, Nakamura said something to Rollins, and WWE did a good job to ensure that fans couldn't hear what exactly the King of Strong Style said to his upcoming opponent. Whatever Nakamura did say though, it clearly got under the skin of Rollins, as it was clearly something that Seth did not want to hear. WWE is building towards something between these two, but what do you think Nakamura said to his future opponent? Let us know your predictions in the comments below. Chelsea Green was also on this week's Raw, and was seen carrying both WWE Women's Tag Team Championships given the injury to Sonya Deville. This practically confirms that Deville's reign has come to an unfortunate end, and during a segment, Katana Chance and Kaden Carter laid claim to a shot at the titles. Before such a match could be approved though, the duo were laid out by Piper Niven, who would essentially steal one of the tag team titles, declaring herself as one half of the champions and Chelsea's new partner. It'll be interesting to see how Green and Niven coexist as a team, as Chelsea seemed more scared of a new partner than anything else, and perhaps this team will be able to remain injury-free, unlike many preceding tag team champions. Matt Riddle was in action on this week's Raw as the original Bro teamed up with a mystery partner to face the Viking Raiders, and that partner ended up being Drew McIntyre. Now, despite WWE promoting a mystery partner, the fact that McIntyre was revealed wasn't too much of a shock, given that the pair have teamed multiple times since Drew's return to TV. In fact, McIntyre and Riddle would even have a backstage promo, making it clear the pair would be teaming together, but that didn't stop WWE from promoting a mystery partner. Some have suggested that WWE only promoted a mystery partner because they wanted fans to think it was Randy Orton, despite all reports stating that Orton's return won't be until much later this year at the very earliest. Orton's name was even trending on Twitter during Raw, as fans clearly felt that WWE was at least hinting at the return of the Viper, but that was never meant to be. McIntyre and Riddle got the win over the Raiders and have proven to be quite the team on Raw, but do you think WWE were trying to do some false advertising by having fans believe it was Orton? Sound off in the comments. And we're ending today with Gunther, who is mere weeks away from having the longest reign as WWE Intercontinental Champion, but won't take it easy as he approaches the record. On last night's Raw, Gunther cut a promo on Chad Gable, and it's worth noting that for the second week, Ludwig Kaiser was getting his flirt on with Maxine Dupree. Perhaps Dupree will turn on Gable, costing Chad the chance to become Intercontinental Champion, but for now, Dupree remains a fixture of the Alpha Academy. After this confrontation, Gable would get the victory over Giovanni Vinci, and this match set up a hard-hitting contest between Otis and Gunther. With Gunther getting a massive powerbomb, the dominant Austrian was able to get the victory, but both sides came out looking good in this latest chapter of this entertaining feud. The much-anticipated Gunther vs. Gable match for the Intercontinental Championship will take place on next week's Raw, and should Gunther retain, or will Gable stop the Austrian breaking the record mere weeks before the all-important September 8th date?